All right. Well, I think we can get started. We seem to have just about everybody in here. So just to get started here, we would like to note that this session is being recorded today for um, future reference and will be made available after about a day or two. So please watch for that. Today is the expression of interest webinar. Quickly, round of introductions. My name is Carson Sinclair. I'm the program coordinator here at Protein Industries Canada. I will mostly be here to help facilitate the webinar today in form of technical issues or any kind of chat problems that you guys may have. I also do assist these three individuals on a day-to-day basis with the technology projects and our EUI process. So we're really excited to share this process and share where Protein Industries Canada is at today with all of you. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Diane to introduce herself.
Good morning. My name is Diane Harms, and I'm the program specialist based in Alberta. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Gervais. I am based in Saskatoon, and I am Protein Industries Canada's Intellectual Property Manager.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Campbell. I'm Director of Programs and Regulatory, and I'm based in Winnipeg.
Awesome.
So as Carson mentioned, we'll be giving you a bit of an overview of a number of different topics, including, how to use this webinar tool, a little bit of an introduction to PIC, what we have in our current investment pipeline, what we're asking for in terms of new projects, and what the process is for applying, as well as walking you through the expression of interest form. And Megan's going to share a little bit more about intellectual property, and we will have a Q&A at the end. During the entire event, you are more than welcome to input your questions into the Q&A box, and Carson's going to show you where that is in the next slide.
Perfect. Thanks, Diane. So just to quickly go over some of the tools that you can use and functions you can use during the webinar today, we recognize that there are people who may be new to the Zoom webinar feature. So you will see down in the bottom left on computers, I believe on tablets or mobile devices, it may be on your top of your screen, but there is an audio settings section where you can adjust any of the features there if you're having difficulties hearing us today, or if there are any kind of technical issues, you can find that there. There's also the chat feature. I will personally be monitoring the chat feature. So if you have any technical issues or if you have any, requests, please put them in there and I can help facilitate and work through the problem, and hopefully we can get you up and running and able to listen into the complete webinar. Next, as Diane mentioned, we will be holding a Q&A session near the end of the presentation. What we ask is that you use this Q&A function to post your questions. You can do so throughout the entire presentation. We will answer them at the end. There is a upvoting feature. It looks like a thumbs up on the right there. If you choose that under any of the questions that are proposed by any of the other attendees, you will be able to push that question to the top of the list, which will help us, which will indicate to us which ones are more urgent and more broadly asked by everybody attending today. And lastly, we have a short polling feature. I will launch the poll right now. We are just looking to get a little bit of feedback from everybody joining today. So if you could please identify which organization type you are representing today, and we will come back and cover the results of that poll later on. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Diane to get us started. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Carson. Oops. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not letting me minimize the poll. I'm just going to pick myself here. Carson, I'm not sure why it's not letting me close it.
That's odd. Because I have it just on the side for myself. Is it in the middle of your screen still?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe everyone has voted, so if I end the poll, it should come off your screen. Is it off now?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem. So I've already advanced a bunch of slides, but we'll make it work anyway. So thank you for taking time to be with us this morning. And to begin, we'll give you a little bit of an overview of Protein Industries Canada. So PIC is one of 5 Canadian superclusters with a geographical focus on Western Canada and a focus specifically on the agri-food sector, most specifically the plant protein sector and its value chain. So PIC has plans to co-invest up to $300 million over the next 4 years in this sector in partnership with industry. As a nonprofit organization, we represent a network of 190 members. I'm just going to minimize the talking box here so it's a little easier to see everyone and see the slides. So PIC aspires to be a catalyst that drives collaboration amongst trailblazers to realize Canada's agri-food potential. As a supercluster, our goal is to encourage multi-company collaborations. And in doing that, we hope to span the value chain and encourage a different way of creating opportunities. PIC's vision is that Canada is a world leader in plant protein, and our mission is to invest collaboratively to accelerate innovation and the competitiveness of the Canadian plant protein sector. To do this, we have several objectives. We want to develop new technologies and processes, grow processing close to production, remove industry-wide barriers and resolve challenges, and increase capacity across the value chain. Our 2035 goal is to see an additional $10 billion in annual incremental value in Canadian produced crops and GDP. We want Canada to be the 5th in global agri-food exports. Currently, we stand at about 8th. And we want to establish Canada as an internationally recognized plant protein cluster so that talent and investment and innovation happens here. PIC has 2 investment categories. One is our technology investments, and the other is capacity building. And our webinar today deals specifically with our technology investments. We're going to take a break right in this moment to get the results of our participant poll. So Carson, if you could pop those up. Excellent. There's a nice diversity of participants today. Thanks, Carson. So to give you some context into the kinds of investments that we make, we'll review our current investment pillars and the technology project pipeline. So PIC has 4 areas of investment. Our create pillar, which focuses on improvements in breeding. Our grow pillar, which focuses on supply side development and the chain of custody and traceability, so ag technologies at the producer level. Our make pillar, which relates to the production of plant ingredients, new processing technologies, and the sell pillar, which is related to the creation of new products. Over the course of our 2 current calls for technology projects, we received 59 expressions of interest. Of those, 20 projects moved forward into the pipeline to become full project proposals. To date, 11 of those projects have been approved and 5 have been announced. This total project value number that you see on the screen on the right-hand side is the investment from both PIC and industry partners. As a supercluster, one of our primary goals is to encourage collaboration. And this collaboration metric graphic is really interesting and important to note in what we're looking for in terms of projects. On average, we see between 2 and 3 organizations who become consortium members. And these are the organizations that sign the master project agreement with PIC and receive funding directly. In addition to those organizations, there's often additional entities that are involved in the project. So they could be private organizations such as food centers or public institutions such as educational post-secondary. On average, we're seeing a minimum of 6 to 7 project participants in the projects. To give you a better sense of the types of projects that we've made investments of, here are the 5 projects that we have announced. So the first project that I'll talk about is the Botanico Carteva Roland Farms project, which is a MAKE project, which relates to the development of novel oilseed-derived ingredients from canola, hemp, and sunflower. The Merit-winning combination and Patura seeds project is also part of the MAKE pillar, and it relates to the development of pea and canola protein products. The Carteva, Bungi, and Botanical project is part of the Create pillar and relates to the development of higher protein canola. The Provision Analytics, Verge Agro, Schematics, and Coots Agro project is part of the Grow pillar, and it is an ag technology project that improves traceability along the value chain. The Lucent AGT Foods project is also a MAKE pillar project, which relates to the development of a micronutrient fertilizer from pulse processing waste. Okay, enough background information. Let's talk about the reason we're all actually here, to talk about the third call for technology projects. On April 20th, PIC announced its third call for expressions of interest. There's no fixed deadline for this call for projects, and we did this because we understand that companies are in a bit of a flux because of COVID, and we wanted to make sure that we were opening up our opportunity for investment for those organizations that are ready to apply, but leaving it available to organizations that aren't in a position to submit an application today. Our goal is to try and batch submissions and review them on about a 6-week basis. And I'd encourage applicants to contact myself, Megan, or Lisa to find out when our next cycle of review is, to try and make sure that you get into that window. Estimating right now that our next review cycle will start around June 1st. Our program guide is available on our website, and the expression of interest form is also available. And I think Carson's going to post in the chat box the link so that you can navigate to that directly. To submit your applications, you do need to be a member and submit through the website portal. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Lisa to cover eligibility in the EUI process.
And I'm on mute. Here I am. The project process takes place in 2 parts. So Diane just introduced our expression of interest, and that is the first step. So I'd say even before you start, the biggest recommendation we could give you is to give that program guide that Carson just posted the link to, give that program guide a really good read. We've tried to put as much information as possible in there on eligibility, priorities, the process, everything. The other piece of advice I have at this point, and you're going to hear us say it quite a few times on this webinar, is give us a call and we can help you through it. And we really mean that. If you have a question and you just don't know, drop one of us an email, give one of us a call, and we'll walk you through it. This is not a one and done type of submission. You can go back and forth with your EUI as many times as you need, and we can let you know when we think it's ready for you to submit through the portal. So we'll walk through the EUI stage this morning. This is a more high-level, maximum 10-page type document. If your EUI is approved, you move through to the project proposal. The project proposal is much more detailed, requires a detailed budget. How long that takes to submit varies between the consortiums, but it's generally several months from the time of move forward to the project proposal and the review by the committee. To be eligible under this program, you must have at least 2 Canadian companies involved in the consortium. One of them can be a multinational. There is no issues with that, but at least one partner must be an SME. Each consortium member must contribute to the project in a meaningful way, and what that means for your particular project, we can discuss what that is for you. However, at least 2 of the members of the consortium must be contributing financially. You must, of course, align with the objectives of both PIC and the Supercluster Initiative, and this work must be incremental to your regular business. So there's a full definition on that in the program guide, but essentially this means that without the PIC funding, you would not be undertaking this work, or it would not be undertaken at the same pace and scope as it would be without the funding. You can include, in fact, we highly recommend that you include some academic or other research institutions such as food centers. You can include foreign companies. This is subject to a prior approval, and all projects must pay a 4% project administration fee. As Diane outlined, you securely submit through our member portal, so the document expression of interest can be submitted there. Only those Word documents are accepted. So if you have put your budget in Excel, we'd encourage you to cut and paste it as a picture or otherwise embed it within the Word document. We'd also like you to choose, if you're willing, 2 opt-ins for us to share your proposal with other funders or with venture capital companies. We are in contact with a number of other funding programs that do ask for access to our pipeline. So if you'd be willing for us to share those, and we've seen some projects go forward under other funding, please check those off, and we will make sure that we do so. Once we evaluate your EUI, there's 3 outcomes. One is that it is approved and ready to move forward to a full project proposal. The secondly is that it's conditionally invited. So it's aligned with their objectives, but we might require some additional information, or we may require some changes before it moves forward. And the third is that as declined, that in its current form, it does not align with PIC objectives or does not fit our eligibility criteria. So we'll just have a bit of a walkthrough of the EUI form. There's really 7 major areas that you need to cover in your form, and we'll just go through them one by one. First of all, of course, is your project partners. So we'd ask that you identified your lead industry partner and any other members here that you're going to be working with. And we'd also request that if you are listing any type of organization here, that you have contacted them and let them know that they are on your EOI. We also ask that you just briefly outline their role in the project and their capabilities and why they are involved. This is the 6 major areas that you're going to go through. Number 1 is you identify the gap, problem, challenge, or opportunity that you are working towards in this project. So we do recommend that you include some specific quantitative information. Industry-wide statistics are helpful, but also quantitative information related to your particular business plan for your particular company and that of your partners. Part 2 is description of the major activities of the project. So this is essentially a high-level work plan. So a reminder here that all the work must be completed by March 31st, 2023, when this government framework ends. So you want to keep this high level, but also provide enough information here that it can go to technical review and that we can see where the work is going. Part 3 is a top level budget. We don't need a detailed budget at this point, and we don't need a budgetary justification at this point. We do need to see what the expected contribution is from each of your partners and how much PIC reimbursement we're looking for. If you do put your budget into a breakdown of major buckets, so things like wages, subcontractors, materials, supplies, equipment, capital, and so on, if you even break it down there, it kind of helps us see a little bit what you're doing. And then we can talk about the eligibility of different expenses with you as we move through, just so you can get an idea of which expenses may be eligible, which not, and we can walk through that piece. Number 4, you need to describe the anticipated outcomes of the project. And most important here is that you have some measurables for your outcomes and also their expected benefits to the value chain in the ecosystem. The outcomes should be described with respect to the alignment of our 4 pillars. And Diane's just walked you through our create, grow, make, sell, and projects that align. And I'll add here that you don't need to align with all 4 of our pillars. So you don't need to find a way to bend your project to make it fit all 4 pillars. That's not realistic. So just describe the ones that it fits with and why, and we can discuss with you from there. Number 5 is the potential risks and barriers. Every project we are funding in this program has significant risk to it, and that's the way that research and development works. We don't expect that you don't have risks applied to your project, but we do expect that you have assessed those risks and have a plan to deal with them if they should arise. And finally, you can attach any other relevant information that you think may help us review your proposal. And like I said earlier, if you're having trouble with any of these, give us a call, send us a draft. We're happy to review at any point in your process. And I think there, I'm gonna turn it over to Megan to talk a little bit about our IP.
All right, thanks, Lisa. So yes, I'm going to walk us through how our program deals with intellectual property. IP is a cornerstone of the Superclusters program, as the program really seeks to have diffusion of new technologies throughout our membership ecosystem. So we're going to just use these last couple of slides to provide an overview of the processes that we use to help project teams manage their intellectual property. Within the expression of interest template, you may have noticed that there is not really a lot of reference to intellectual property, but you can capture relevant IP considerations in section 5 of the template that Lisa walked through. I think what's important to note right at the outset is that Protein Industries Canada and the Supercluster Initiative does not take a stake in intellectual property that's generated through funded projects. But we do require that consortia collaborate on the development of a plan for your IP. So this plan within our processes is known as your IP rationale. And my role is really to work with you and the companies that you're collaborating with to develop an understanding of how the background intellectual property that you're bringing into the project will be incorporated. And then to also identify the foreground IP that you anticipate developing. We consider how your intellectual property is going to be protected, how it will be made available among the project participants, and then ultimately we're looking at commercialization. So we don't require an IP rationale to be generated for your expression of interest, but IP is a key consideration that is for every project that will move forward to full proposal. And then one final additional aspect of IP that I'll just take a minute to mention here today is our IP registry. And so we're in the process of developing what will be an online database of the registered IP generated by our members. This database will provide high-level information about patents, trademarks, and other registered forms of IP that are generated within funded projects. And it'll really serve to provide companies that are not involved in a particular project with licensing discussions with the companies who did generate the IP. This registry is something that will be available to all members of Protein Industries Canada through our member portal. So I'll just build on what Lisa and Diane have already said in terms of if you have any questions related to any aspect of IP within the Protein Industries Canada programs, please reach out to me either directly, or if you're working with Lisa or Diane on your expression of interest, they can certainly channel questions to me as well. So that is it on IP, and I think we're ready to pass the torch over to Carson now.
Awesome, thanks Megan. So we have had one question come in over the chat, but we would also like to open it up to everybody at this time to use the Q&A function of the webinar to pose any questions you may have, and we will discuss them in a forum like question. So the first one here is, so they were asking about the membership requirements for projects. So Diane, could you just clarify the what individuals need to be members to be involved in projects?
Sure. So PIC's requirement is that the organizations that become consortium members are the signatories to the master project agreement and are receiving reimbursement funding from PIC become members of PIC. So quite a number of organizations are members of PIC, regardless of whether or not they are receiving direct funding, as an opportunity to access some of our member perks, such as some of that access to the IP registry, some other software tools that we have on market research that are going to be launched. And I think we'll be having a webinar on that in a few weeks. And so there's other resources that are available on the website portal for members. It's a fairly nominal cost to become a member of PIC. It's about $500 a year. And that gives you access to the member portal, but then also engages you in the network of organizations that are emerging. So, so really, only the organizations that expect to receive funding are required to become PIC members, but we certainly encourage a broader participation just so that we can extend the network of organizations that are involved in the supercluster.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane, for that clarification. So the next question posed here, Lisa, I think you can be best to answer it. It was, can you edit your EOI submission, or is it just a one-time submission?
No, it's absolutely not. It's an iterative process up to the point of full submission. So if you're looking to put together an EOI, contact one of us and we'll walk you through the process. And as you get your drafts together, you can send them to us. We can tell you what we think is missing, what might help make things more clear. Then once we've decided that it is complete, we'll give you the go ahead and you can submit it through the portal. Once it's submitted, it's considered final.
Awesome, thanks. And just to expand on that, I think the following question, it talks about the full proposal. So you guys stated that it may take several weeks to review a submitted EOI and potentially go back and forth on a few edits, like you just mentioned. Once you get to a full proposal process, how long would it take you to review that? As well as if it's rejected, is there an opportunity to amend or resubmit the full proposal?
Take the full proposal as an iterative process. So we would not send it to the review committee until we've worked with you on every piece of it and make sure that it's clear right down to your every tab in your workbook. It depends on the size of your project, the number of partners, and a host of other factors. It's a very detailed process. So once we've deemed it complete, we set it up to a review committee date, which is generally within a few weeks of you having completed the application to our approval, to our internal process.
Awesome, thanks. There aren't any other questions in the chat right now, but could you guys, Megan, perhaps just help us understand what you guys can do to help people build consortia for projects if they're looking for other partners?
Sure. It's fairly typical for one company to come to us with an idea for a project and understand that there's a requirement for partners, but maybe not know who those partners might be. And so a big part of the work that Diane and Lisa and I and Carson and really our whole team do is sort of a matchmaking aspect. So we've been working with companies for close to a year now through the expressions of interest process and really have gotten to understand who's out there and what companies are looking for collaboration opportunities. And so once we get a sense of sort of what you're working toward, we can work with you to either provide introductions, so two companies can have an initial discussion, or if it makes sense, we can be sort of part of that conversation as well and describe how we think that working together might work. So you're certainly not limited to companies that are within our membership, but that is definitely something that we can do to try and provide connections and make introductions to companies who could potentially work together. And I think Lisa mentioned that Diane, one of the outcomes of an expression of interest could be sort of conditionally approved, and that might be a case where we would say, you know, we think adding this company into your consortia would make a lot of sense, and so let's have a conversation and see if we can make that happen as well.
Awesome.
If I can just add to Megan's comment, I think one of the things that we typically see strengthens projects is you look to your upstream and downstream for how you build your consortium. So who are you buying inputs from, and who are you selling to, and how can you strengthen those relationships by building a consortium? So what is your client looking for in terms of an outcome, in terms of their ingredients, and how can you develop an R&D process to develop that ingredient for them? So it's really a way to think about how do you strengthen those relationships in the value chain.
Thanks, Dan. That's great insight on how to strengthen your consortium. We appreciate that. There aren't any other questions coming into the Q&A at this time. If either of you guys have any other points that you'd like to make, I don't have any questions written down here to probe you guys with, but if you had anything to add, or if anybody on the line has any extra questions, we have lots of time here to answer. So.
Sure. Let me say something here. I think one of the things that we've realized as our projects emerge is that, you know, PIC's goal is to be very forward thinking and make bold moves in terms of our investments. So we want to see projects that have the ability to have that significant impact on the GDP, the stage of export development. So we really want you to think about developing projects that are bold, that are inclusive, and have that significant collaboration to make a significant step forward. So incremental projects are great, and advances in technology are great, but think about how you can make a bold step forward.
Great, thanks, Diane. So a few more have come in here. The first one is if individual is in the business of working with commodities or finished commodities, not just individual ingredients, and they're wondering if that is a fit for a project. Now, I understand that a lot of times these specific questions maybe need some more clarification as to what type of project they're working on, but if either of you could provide a little bit of insight as to, you know, if a finished commodity type project would be aligned with our investments.
Sure, I'll jump in. For sure. I think it is a case where we would want to have an understanding of what the commodity you're working with is, and sort of who your customers are, and how you're wanting to expand your customer base. What I will say is that the technology projects that we're funding really are about new technologies and research and development. So there does have to be an aspect of that to the project that you're working on. We're not particularly well set up to fund large capital expansions of a processing plant, for instance. However, if there's an R&D element to get equipment up and running to enable you to have a new line of business, that's a type of project we could certainly consider, have a conversation about. So I really like, our key message typically is give us a call and let's talk about your personal situation. So I think that's sort of the key answer here as well.
Yeah. I think too, one question that we typically see when we talk about what commodities we make investments in is that we do focus specifically on the major commodity crops of Western Canada, so the oil seeds, the cereals, and the pulses. It's atypical for us to consider projects that focus on niche commodities such as a greenhouse or other vertical growth type of projects. Algae is probably not in our portfolio of interest right now, but if you're talking about wheat or canola or barley or oats, those are all crops that contribute to the plant protein sector.
Awesome, thank you. Diane, I know you covered over a bit of our project pipeline and the number of projects we've pushed through, but would you have the rate of acceptance at the EUI level by chance off the top of your head?
So when we talk about 59 projects that came through as an EOI. I don't have the math in front of me exactly, but I can just do it on my calculator right now. But I think it's in and around that 20 to 25% range. 33% are accepted into the pipeline. And to be fair, when we first did our EOI process, we actually accepted 24 projects into the pipeline. And through our due diligence process and working with companies, several of those projects left our pipeline due to a number of different reasons, some being that the company's financial situations changed and they decided they didn't want to pursue the projects. And in other instances, other things occurred and it just seemed like that. So our success rate is relatively high in terms of passing through the EOI process. It's part of the due diligence stages where projects may step away from the pipeline.
Great. And Megan, I believe we were discussing earlier a bit about how people can reach out and get help with building consortia. The question here is just if they would need to contact us with the initial project idea to help with partners, or is it a later discussion? So I think it's just more of a timing discussion as to when do we step in to help them build their consortia.
Really, it can be sort of at the outset of forming your expression of interest all the way through that process. I would say a good place to start if you're a company with an idea is to work through the expression of interest template and sort of jot down how you would approach the project ideally and how you see it flowing, and then give that to us as sort of an initial draft to take a look at, and then we can have a conversation about where we see other partners might have a fit. Lisa, Diane, I don't know if you have a different perspective on that, but I think, you know, we want to be involved as early as we can so that we can get you the help early and you can start those conversations, because it's easier to have all the brains around the problem at the beginning rather than to try and fit new solutions in once you've already done a lot of work to get going.
Thanks, Megan. So we have a question about a bit of a geography question. If we give any preference to, you know, having companies with head offices that are based in Western Canada, or if that plays a preference at all in the decision making at the EOI stage. Lisa, are you comfortable with answering that?
Well, and I'll let Diane and Megan jump in. Because of our mandate, we do tend to have a lot of Western Canadian companies involved, but that's certainly not a restriction or a requirement. We do have projects that are based both on the farther West Coast and also in Eastern Canada. So,
yeah, I would say that while we do have a geographical focus as a supercluster on Western Canada, we do see projects across Canada because food manufacturing is a significant industry across the country. And so we will make investments where it makes sense to advance plant protein production.
Great. So the last question here in the chat currently is if we have any collaborative projects with other superclusters. Diane, are you aware of any kind of collaboration between our supercluster and other ones, or any projects that overlap between different initiatives?
So to date, we haven't made any co-investments with other superclusters, but we just recently added a new team member to PIC's staff, whose key role is to help us engage in projects like that. And I very recently participated in a conversation with an organization that's developing an EOI that I think would be a tremendous fit between ourselves and the digital superclusters. So we're working on having some conversations ahead of time to see if their expression of interest that they submit to us might be something where we could build some co-investment around. So certainly that's an option if we can develop it. Obviously, more organizations involved, there is some timing challenges, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. At the end of the day, though, the total investment limitations apply not only for us, but also for the other superclusters. So that investment would really only be for 50% of the total investment in the project. So it doesn't necessarily bring more money to the project to diversify the funding that would be available.
Cool. That's cool. I hadn't heard much about that, so that's really cool to find out. Um, there are no other questions at this time. We can give everybody a last chance, couple minute here. But I would just like to thank everybody for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time to come learn about Protein Industries Canada and the EOI stage and format. So thank you, and I'll let Diane close us off if there's no questions.
Sure. One question that we do get quite commonly, and I'll just throw it out there in case people are wondering, is how big projects or how small of the projects do we fund? And there really is no ceiling and there is no floor that we submit to. However, because we are looking to make substantive, bold investments, they need to be significantly sized so that you can actually accomplish that. So to date, we've made investments where the PIC investment was $500,000. And we've also made investments where the PIC commitment is up to $20 million. So the projects can be scaled from $1 million to $40 million. So realistically, I mean, it doesn't really matter what we've done before. It's really what matters for your project and making sure that it's rational for that. And then the final side to that question is how much money is really left in PIC's investment portfolios. So we're estimating right now that there's about $30 million of funding that we're prepared to commit, and we'd like to do so before Christmas. So this year, we're really hoping to have all of our investments in the technology portfolio kind of ready to go so that organizations have as much runway as possible for that March 2023 deadline of when our funding has to be spent. So, please submit early, and encourage you to have conversations and dialogues with Meg and Lisa or myself to kind of get a better sense about your individual circumstances so that we can help coach you towards what would be a successful project within our portfolio. So again, the best takeaway that I can say is that just to reach out to us, our contact information is all on the website. You can also contact our info contact, which goes to Carson, and then he sends it to any one of us to follow up. And we'll set up a 30-minute consultation with you or longer, depending on what you need to do with yourself or your project proponents, to talk through the idea, to talk through any questions that you have after reading the program guide, and to help you be successful, because our goal and your goal really align, and that's growing the plant protein industry in Canada. So I think with that, we can probably wrap up. Thank you everyone for participating, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.